Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good day and welcome to another episode of Global Arena on my YouTube channel, Global Arena TV, recorded on Thursday, the 18th of January 2024. I'm your host, Umar Isa Dandago. Well, my guest and I today are sitting 9 hours apart, and we are going to talk about an important election, one of the attention-grabbing elections of this year, 2024. I'm talking simply about the recently concluded election that brought Dr. William Lai Ching-te into power in one of the world's most beautiful and decorated islands. Taiwan, of course, is a disputed island situated roughly 100 miles off the coast of Southeast China on East China Sea. China, which is the second largest economy in the world, still considers Taiwan as its own part, as part and parcel of the mainland China. And it is diplomatically angry with any country that recognizes or claims to recognize the island as an independent nation. And on the other hand, this is on the one hand. On the other hand, the United States does not recognize Taiwan as an independent autonomous country, but has, and by extension, maintains a robust, quote-unquote, unofficial relationship with the self-governing island. On Saturday, the 13th of January 2024, the Taiwanese people went to the polls and elected William Lai Ching-te, the current vice president, to succeed his boss. He is said to be pro-independence, and China is not happy with the results at all. So how has the Chinese response been viewed both in the US and around the world as well? Plus, how significant is Taiwan that makes the world's biggest superpowers competing with each other as a result of? Well, my guest today is the perfect person to analyze and scrutinize every bit of this issue for us. He is Dr. Austin Wang, an assistant professor of political science at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. And he joins me right now via Zoom from the US state of Nevada in the city of Las Vegas. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Austin Wang, for sparing your precious time to be on Global Arena.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure, of course, to have you, and many thanks for agreeing to record the session for us. Many thanks indeed on behalf of my viewers. It means a lot to me. Let's kick off briefly by getting to hear a little bit about your biography. Who is Dr. Wang?
Okay, so good morning and good afternoon, everyone in the world. And I am Austin Wang. So I am currently an assistant professor in the Department of Political Science at the University of Nevada at Las Vegas. My research interest mainly focuses on public opinion, especially how people in the US, in China, and in Taiwan, they view each other and their preference on foreign policy, and the psychological mechanism behind the formation of their preference. So that is my main research topic. And another research topic of mine are mainly about the social media and how the usage of social media like the TikTok, Instagram, or Facebook influence people's policy preference and influence people's willingness to accept some fact check, or whether they will be influenced by some misinformation. That is another important project that I'm working on. So today I'm happy to be invited and share my observations and my studies on Taiwan politics.
This is a very good and comprehensive introduction. I am particularly interested in the other part of your research in which you focus on social media and how it is used by the people of China and Taiwan and of course the US. But before then, were you born in China or Taiwan?
Oh, actually, none of them. So it's a very it's a not so long family history. My grandparents they live in China, but my grandparents they moved to Taiwan in 1949 during the Chinese Civil War. But I was born in the U.S. Because my parents and they moved to the U.S. and then I was born here in the U.S.
Wow, That's correct. So you're American. That's great to hear this. So if that is the case, then I would assume that in your analysis, are we going to hear more of a US-centric point of view towards the China-Taiwan issue?
Well, actually, I will try my best to be neutral because I am a scholar and I teach East Asian politics. And because just like I mentioned, my family in the past generation that lived in China, so I talked to my grandparents a lot about the China politics. So I think I'm confident to say that I know about how people in China they feel the Taiwan issue. So I think you don't need to worry about that part.
Yeah, definitely. Of course, it's a funny question. I decided to put to you in order to hear your response. That means, and that's what makes you the perfect person to talk about this because you're Chinese, you are Taiwanese, and you are American. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. Let's move on. Um, okay, let's start from the basics. Of course, Taiwan as a country, is it independent?
Yeah, so I think it is a very interesting question because it depends on how we define the two key words you just mentioned. The first is that what is a country, and the second is that what is independent. Yeah, because that if we look at the textbook of the Policy 101 or any political science textbook, we usually define a country as that there's a territory or there's a land and there are some people live on the land and they form a government and the government can fully control that land. Yeah, so that's how we define the definition of a country. Yeah, so if we use these simple definitions, then Taiwan is a country in this definition because the Taiwan has its own government, Taiwan has its own military and constitution, and people in Taiwan they vote for their president, and so yeah, and no other country can influence this election outcome. So people, whoever win in the election in Taiwan, they will be the next president. Yeah. So if we only use this definition, and there's also no other, the military from other country cannot intervene whatever happened in Taiwan. Yeah. So basically, if we use this simple definition, then Taiwan fit the definition of country, and that definition also means that Taiwan is independent. Yeah. But at the same time, if we use some other if you use, for example, China usually claim Taiwan is not an independent country, and one of the obvious reason is because Taiwan lack international recognition. Yeah, because many countries, they when they want to deal with China, they want to do business with China, then they need to follow China's so-called One China principle. China insisted that around the world there is only one China, and both Taiwan and China belong to that China, which is PRC. So following this one China principle, many countries establish their own one China policy, so they do not recognize Taiwan as a country. So Taiwan did not join the United Nations, and Taiwan was not a member of the World Health Organizations and many other international organizations. So if we use the definition of international recognition as the way to define whether a country is a country, then Taiwan does not fit in that definition. Yeah, we can also find some other similar case. So one possible controversial case is Palestine and Kurdish people.
Yes.
They also have their territory, but sometimes their territory will be or their authority power will be influenced by other country. But in the eye
Yes.
of some other, they will also think that they have their own country, but they do not have enough international recognitions. Yeah. Yeah. So and so
Maybe
yeah.
with the yeah, with regards to the issue of the Kurds, the Kurdish people in the Middle East, which is said to be the one of the, or if not the largest ethnic minorities in the Middle East, stretching from Syria, Turkey, and Iran, of course. But then they claim that they have been secluded, persecuted by the powerful governments of those countries. When you take a look at that, for example, and the issue of Palestine, I think Palestine has a member at the UN, probably
Yes.
not a full kind of a member, right?
Mm-hmm.
So looking at them and this Taiwanese issue, can we say that it's just complicated? That's the answer?
Yeah, so I think it relates to the second keywords that we just mentioned, which is the definition of independent. Because that how do we define that a country is independent or not? Yeah, because theoretically, if when we say that we are an independent adult, just like you and me, which means that we can freely decided where we want to live, and we can freely change our name. We can freely decide what kind of dinners we want to have. Yeah, so we call this as an independent
Yeah.
adults, right? But when it comes to an independent country, then the issue of Taiwan become more complex because that based on many survey that we conducted in Taiwan, we always ask people in Taiwan a very interesting question that uh, do you want to change the name of your country? Because currently the country name of Taiwan is called the Republic of China. Yeah, so we have a term China in the country name. But in the eye of many people in Taiwan, they want to change their name from the Republic of China (ROC) to Taiwan. But at the same time, the PRC China, the People's Republic of China, or the mainland China, they say that Taiwan cannot change their country name. If Taiwan change their country name, then the China will definitely attack Taiwan. Yeah. So because of this
Oh,
reason, when we ask people in Taiwan that do you want to change your country name if China will not attack us, then 80% of people in Taiwan will say yes. Yeah. Then we ask people in Taiwan that if China will attack us, just like they claimed before, then do you still want to change your country name? Then only 20% of people say yes. So in the eye of when we try to define independent, then it becomes a tricky issues in Taiwan because many people in Taiwan, they want to call their country name as Taiwan, but they
yes.
cannot because if they really do this, then it will be attacked or invaded by the PRC China. So it's just like if you want to change your name, then but your neighbor did not allow you to change your name, then maybe you are not that independent. Yeah.
Oh, so do you see a kind of I don't want to use the word injustice,
Mm-hmm.
but kind of a imbalance in the process of um, saying which country is independent and which country is not. For example, there is this issue of Cyprus crisis, Cyprus issue.
Mm-hmm.
Northern Cyprus is said to be called the Turkish Republic of Northern
Mm-hmm.
Cyprus. It's influenced by the Turkish government.
Mm-hmm.
Almost a lot of things are controlled, as they say, by the affairs of the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus are controlled by the Turkish government, for example. But then a lot of countries in the world do not recognize Northern Cyprus as an independent country. The
Mm-hmm.
Southern Cyprus has been recognized and has a place, has a seat at the United Nations, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, it is the Turkish government alone, single-handedly, that recognizes Northern Cyprus as an independent country, for example. Then we
Mm-hmm.
have Taiwan here. Some countries would like to recognize Taiwan as an independent country, but then China is frowning its face. Do you
Mm-hmm.
see a little bit of injustice, for example, or unbalanced relationship in terms of this?
Yeah, well, I think that it is fine to evaluate this as injustice, but I want to say that it is more than that because that currently many these kind of issues on independence or recognitions are largely influenced by the historical legacy of first the colonialisms, and the second is the World War II, because after the World War II, the U.S. government as well as the United Nations, they try to encourage different nations to seek independence. They want different ethnic groups to have their own country, but at the same time, in the United Nations also try not to make so many new countries. That will try to fix the boundary of different countries that after the World War II. So because of this, yeah, we can see a lot of conflict because around the world, there are many, in the eye of many people, the boundary of the country and the boundary of their ethnic group did not fit to each other. Yeah, just like the case of the Kurdish, or just like the case of Cyprus you just mentioned. Yeah, so there's
Yes.
some people in the country that simply think they belong to the other country, or they belong to the majority of the other ethnic group in other countries. So when the boundary of the state and the boundary of the country did not fit to each other, so that's how why we have so many issues right here. But at the same time, we also know that nowadays the world is, or international relation is mainly driven by realism. So who have more
Yes, realism,
economic
of course.
or
The
military
theory of
power,
realism.
then they have more say, more say, because is no one dominant power, or there's no world police to decide who is right and who is wrong. So in the end, it's always a long-term relative competitions between different group of peoples on international politics. Yeah.
Yes, but then the like practical application of this theory of realism is now more pervasive due to the issue of multipolarity. We're not living in a bipolar or unipolar world. Right now, we have emerging powers. For example, India is asserting itself as a big power in Asia. China, we also have China, the second largest economy in the world. We have Russia on the other hand, for example, trying to show the world that it is still that very powerful nation that we used to know some years ago. Turkey is also. So would you accept it that now we're living in a multipolar rather than bipolar or unipolar world?
Well, I think it's still. I think we still need to observe maybe a few more years, because nowadays, if we look at the conflict between the Russians and Ukraine, or we look at the recent crisis in the Red Sea, when most of these crises happen, the United States is still the only dominant sponsors, and I'm not say the sponsor of this conflict. The US is a main sponsor trying to maintain the stabilities or orders of these places. Yeah, so but if we
But
look at the
some would say the US has been fueling such crises.
yeah,
Would you accept
but
it?
well, I think that the US tried to bring the order back to when the crisis didn't happen, right? So, and we can say that if the US did not help, just like if the US did not help Ukraine, or US did not send any troop to the Red Sea, then maybe in the case of Red Sea, maybe the crisis will continue, right? Or maybe if we look at the cases in the Ukraine, if the Russia really successfully invade and occupy the whole Ukraine, then other countries in East Europe that will be even more nervous, as well as South Korea and Japan will also become more nervous, because the Russia's next target could possibly be Japan, right? So both Japan and South Korea would will start to build more nuclear weapons, and it will be more likely to have more conflict. And
Okay.
so it's really hard to say that if the US did not intervene, then how other countries will respond. Maybe we will see another round of the uh, another round of the of increasing military spendings all over the world. So I just want to say that it's hard to tell whether these U.S. interventions will increase the cost or lower the cost on the globe on the stability of the world.
But US critics are of the opinion that when after October the 7th, the United States should have played a peace broker role by bringing the warring parties to the table and kind of resolve the matter peacefully without shedding more blood, for example. Instead, Joe Biden said they were, at that time, he said they are standing with the Israelis, and then continued supplying, as the critics say, Israel with more sophisticated weapons to bombard, kill, and murder, as U.S. and Israeli critics say, innocent civilians, more than 24,000 people now. Do you say that the U.S. has got it wrong in terms of being the world police and a peace broker, as you might have insinuated earlier?
Yeah, so I think the case of Israel is, yeah, it's a lot more complex. So what I just mentioned is that how the US they deal with other emerging powers and whether the world is still a unipolar or multipolar. So when we want to define whether the world is a unipolar or multipolar, it still depends on whether there's one single power can try to maintain the current order. So that's how our definition of the
Okay.
of unipolar or multipolar. If we really live in a world of the multipolar, what we should observe is that those big head or those dominant power, whenever there's any crisis happen, these big head they will gather together to decide what is a possible next step. For example, during the Cold War, whenever there is some conflict, you usually see a hot line between the Russia and the United States, even though both of them are not the one who are in the conflict. So we will call that kind of situation as a multipolar. But nowadays, when we look at the conflict in the Russias and in Russia's or in the Red Sea, we can see the United States still just send the troops that may take action unilaterally, and the China did not take any active role, at least not openly in these two situations. So if we use this kind of definition, we can still plan that, yeah. So maybe the world is still closer to the definition of unipolar. So had not reached to the definition of the multipolar yet, which was described by the former U.S. Secretary of the State Kissinger, yeah, because Kissinger
Yeah.
defined the situation
Yes.
of the multipolar as a situation of the Europe before the World War I and World War II. There's no one dominant power in the Europe for the past 1,000 years. So, but whenever anything happens, every country try to balance with each other. So I think that's
Yeah.
how we should expect as a definition of multipolar. Yeah. So.
So in a term, yeah, like in a word, the world
Mhm.
is now more in unipolar. Period.
But we can see the trend. Let's go closer to the multipolar because both China and India and Russia, their role become increasingly important. So we could expect that this multipolar worldview would
It's coming.
happen one day in the future. Yeah.
Okay, good. Of course, and all of them are racing to have a lot of influence here in Africa, on the continent of Africa. We have a lot of Chinese investment and influence, especially in East Africa. And Turkey has opened a lot of embassies, about 40 or something like that, embassies in Africa, and it is also trading a lot with the continent of Africa. Let's not forget the US, which has been very much present in the continent, and so on and so forth. Let's move on, Doctor, to this issue of the election that recently took place. What can you say about the election? I have gone through your Twitter page, Twitter page, now X, and I've seen one post that got my attention. Somebody tagged you in a tweet, and he said that the outcome of last Saturday's election happened as Dr. Austin Wang had predicted. How do you
Yes.
feel? Yes, how do you feel that you had predicted an outcome?
Yeah. So basically,
And it happened.
mhm. Yeah, so basically, the elections in Taiwan this time is can be easily predicted because the survey technique and the survey tools in Taiwan are very advanced. And most of people in Taiwan they have the landline telephone at home and they also have a cell phone. So it's very easy to conduct very representative and very precise survey to help us predict the election outcome. So it's a first thing. So it's not easy, it's not hard to make the prediction of the election result in Taiwan. And also the electoral system in Taiwan is relatively simple because in Taiwan we have presidential election. So whoever got the most vote will be the winner of the election, and whoever got a fewer vote will be the loser. So there is only one winner for each presidential election. Yeah, so compared to those country with led by the parliamentary or by the Congress, in the presidential election, it's easier to predict who will be the winner. And in
Oh,
Taiwan, this time we have three candidates running for the election. The first is from the ruling party DPP, and his name is Lai Ching-te. And in DPP, DPP is a party feature is green color, so we usually call it as a green camp. And this green camp, they support more on independence of Taiwan. They want Taiwan to change its name and change its constitution. And the green camp is also favor to have a stronger relationship with the United States and to get away from China. And there are two major opposition parties. The first opposition parties is the KMT, or the Blue Camp. And this KMT is a party who established the foundation of the Republic of China. So KMT is a party that helped create the country of Taiwan right now. But at the same time, with time goes by, this KMT become more and more China friendly, because they believe that both people who live in China and who live in Taiwan, their ancestors are both Chinese. So they are more China friendly, so they want more economic cooperation with mainland China. And the third party, which is a new phenomenon in this election, is called the Taiwan People's Party, or TPP. And TPP, we usually call it as a white camp. So this TPP is very unique because in the past 30 years, after Taiwan has the election, the past 30 years are mainly competition between the blue camp and the green camp. The one is pro-China and the other is anti-China. So these two major parties, they fought over the presidencies in Taiwan in the past 30 years. But this time, we see the emergence of the new party, the Taiwan People's Party. And the presidential candidate of this white camp, which is Dr. Wang, and he received about 20% of the vote, which is considerable, because in the past, there are only two dominant parties. But this time, Taiwan has a new third option. And so this kind of phenomenon is new because that in most of the country with presidential election, usually is always dominated by the two parties. For example, in the US, we only have Republican and we only have Democrats. And the third party have no chance at all. But in Taiwan, this time, 1/4 or 1/5 of the people choose the third option. And the reason is because they are tired of the old two-party system. They just want to have something new. Yeah, so this time they found out that the third party, the Taiwan People's Party, is quite attractive, and its candidate is also quite competitive. So many people choose to vote for this third option. And after that, this third party was still quite strong. So we could see, at least in the next 4 or 8 years, it should still be the competition among these three parties, blue, green, and white in Taiwan.
So that makes Taiwan pretty much democratic, because I think I have a question here. How democratic is Taiwan? Like having multiple parties competing for one political office, for example, is, I believe, very much part and parcel of democracy. That makes Taiwan pretty much a democratic, fully or relatively democratic nation, more democratic than many Asian countries. Is that true?
Basically, if we use the measure of the Freedom House and other academic definitions of democracy, Taiwan should be categorized as a fully democracy, because almost anyone can run for the president in Taiwan, and anyone can organize any kinds of parties in Taiwan, and then the freedom of speech in Taiwan is very high. So you can almost say anything on Taiwan politics, and there will almost no consequence for whatever you said. Yeah, and everyone can freely organize any kind of parties in Taiwan. And in 2019, Taiwan just passed, is the first country in East Asia to pass the same-sex marriage. And in this election, there are many candidates in Taiwan. They call for the legalization of marijuana, or legalization of weed and other drugs.
Yes.
So you can, so there's also another group of people in Taiwan. They want to legalize the gambling in Taiwan. So every topic can be discussed. Yeah, so I think if we use this kind of definitions, then Taiwan is a very free country.
Okay. But some people would say that it's funny to advocate for the legalization of smoking marijuana and some drugs, for example, which have been proved by some doctors to be harmful and detrimental to the health of human beings. Is that freedom? Is that democracy?
Yeah, so basically the idea of democracy is that first you can discuss, and if you can form a public opinion, then we use this public opinion to form a vote or to ask politician to make some proposal. And if the proposal was passed, then it become law. Then the government should follow the law, right? So, and in the case of Mariana, the basic core concern is that whether it will influence the others or not, or whether yeah. So if it will not influence the other, for example, if you do not allow people to smoke marijuana in front of children, or we do not allow the kids to have marijuana before they become an adult, and once everyone become an adult, and if you think that you can uh burden or you can shoulder the responsibility of taking the marijuana and then just let it be. Yeah, so that's how many supporters they think we should legalize marijuana. You just take it and you take your own
Okay.
risk. Well, just like you have fast food and fast food is not feel healthy, but you still want it. And so it's they use the same logic. But still many others in Taiwan and the US also oppose the legalization of marijuana because it will be harmful to the brain anyway. If your brain were harmed, then we're not sure you can still make any decision making rationally. Yeah, so that's another
Yes.
important concern on the legalization of marijuana. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. What are the challenges ahead of this president-elect William Lachinta? Any president who has been elected to the office of presidency in any country definitely must prepare ahead. I mean, to face some challenges that are unique to that particular country. What are those unique challenges that he is presented with? Or is all is well there in Taiwan? Is just going to sleep in the office with no internal domestic problems apart from the Chinese aggression, as the West puts it.
Yeah, so basically there are two major challenge that the newly elected president Lai Ching-te need to face. The first challenge is definitely the Taiwan's relation with China, because DPP and Lai or the Green Camp, they are more pro-US and they are more pro-independent. So when Lai was get elected, and in the past 8 years, the Taiwan was ruled also by DPP and by the former president Tsai Ing-wen, and which is also pro-independent. So China was quite angry about either any green camp candidate to be elected. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but at the same time, Taiwan and China still have very strong economic cooperation. So it is very likely that China will use economy to punish the people in Taiwan. For example, in the 8 years, China cut the number of the Chinese tourists to Taiwan a lot, and China sometimes they will block some product made by Taiwan to be imported to China. So since Lai was elected, we can still expect that China will use a similar strategy to punish many business or many companies in Taiwan. Yeah, so that will definitely be a challenge for the Lai government. And also domestically, the Lai government need to face another challenge because when Lai only got 30% of the votes in this presidential election, so which means that there are 60% of the voters did not choose Lai as a new president. And in the Congress election, this 60% of the vote also make the Green Camp the minority in the Congress. The Green Camp only account for about 40 to 45% of the seats in the Congress. So if the opposition parties, including the Blue Camp and White Camp, they decided to form a coalition and work together, then they can scrutinize or they can review from time to time on any budget that the Lai government proposed. So they are very likely to oppose many policy that Lai proposed. And I think the second challenge. And especially in the past 30 years, just like I mentioned, many people, they are tired of the two major parties. They want to, they choose to select the third camp, the white camp this time, because they believe the two major parties pay too much attention to international politics, including how Taiwan treat the U.S., how Taiwan treat China, but they do not put another concern on domestic politics. So the house price in Taiwan was quite high, but the salary or the hourly wage in Taiwan was not high enough. So many young people, they cannot afford to buy a house. It's a very big issue to many people in Taiwan, so which makes the younger generation refuse to give birth in Taiwan. So the birth rate in Taiwan was very low. So among these young people, they think that the two major party, blue camp and the ruling government, the green camp, did not pay enough number of attention to the low birth rate or and high house price. So
Yes.
the Lai government must try to do something to deal with it. So that's why in this election we can see that more than half of the younger generation decided to vote the new party, the white camp, because they think the white camp could bring some hope, because which to solve some issue that the two major party cannot solve in the past 30 years.
Yeah, even though the presidential candidate for the White Camp Party kind of looks old, older than probably, I think, by mere looking at his face, older than William Lachite, I think. Am I right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they should have rallied around and chosen someone with like young age, somebody who is young and vibrant that could possibly push the country to the direction they wanted, but they didn't.
Yeah, so I think that even though the candidates of the white camp, Dr. He was not that young, but many young people in Taiwan believe that is the one who understands the younger generation. So if we
Oh,
take the U.S. as example, 4 years and 8 years ago, younger generations in the U.S. also support Bernie Sanders. But Bernie Sanders, he was also quite old, but young
very
people
old.
think that they understand what young people are thinking. Yeah, so that's why
Yeah,
the younger generation support the yeah, regardless of his age.
yeah. Oh, so it's about thinking. It's about getting into the minds of the young people and appealing to them in such a way that they can easily resonate and understand the situation, right? It's not
Yes.
about the age. It's
Mhm.
about quality and understanding the situation, right?
Yes.
Okay, you talked about earlier about China probably may or might impose Taiwan, I mean, some sanctions on Taiwan. God forbid, but if it happens, is it possible for Taiwan to move westwards, if I can put it this way, and forge relations, trade relations with other countries, for example? Is it possible? Or that one China policy restricts it from having trade relations with other countries?
Yeah, I think it is already an ongoing process. Yeah, because that in the past few years, because of the COVID-19, so the China basically closed its borders, and so it's very hard to do business in China. So many businessmen in Taiwan, they gradually shift their factories and their capital to many countries to Southeast Asia. For example, they might move their factories and move their money to Vietnam and India. So now if you want to buy some laptop, in the past, the laptop could be made by the collaboration of Taiwan and China, but now you are more likely to see the collaboration between Taiwan and India. The next generation of iPhone, 30% of the iPhone will be manufactured in India instead of in China. So I think it is an ongoing process. But at the same time, it's also because that the working the hourly wage in China gradually increased because the welfare in China gradually improved. So people in China demand more salary. So it's the cost of production is also become higher in China. So that's another reason that for many Taiwanese businessmen as well as many international companies, they start to move to Southeast Asia. But I want to say that China shift its economic policies a lot after China changed its COVID-19 policy early last year. So since China reopened its borders and China called for international business to come in again, so maybe we can wait and see whether this kind of reopen would bring the money or capital back to China. So it is something that we don't know whether it work or not.
You earlier talked about Taiwan or Taiwanese facing the problem of lack of children. This week also, China, there was a report that we got that China is also suffering from lack of young people or children because of the birth restriction policy or something like that. How hard hitting could it be for Taiwan to one day wake up and discover that it's full of aging population, elderly people, and the younger generation is just shrinking? How hard hitting, how problematic could it be for the country?
Yeah, I think it's a very problematic issues, not only in Taiwan and in China, but also in all of the advanced democracy. So I think the only exception is the U.S. because the U.S. keep welcoming the new immigrants to the U.S. So the birth rate in the U.S. can also are always quite high. But if we look at all the birth rate in Japan, in South Korea, in Taiwan, and now in China, their birth rate is very low. So every year there are more people die than the number of people that was being born. So the populations are already shrinking, and it also means that when these younger and fewer generations they grow up, then they need to that not only need to feed themselves, they also need to feed the older generation with more people, and they also need to feed their own kids. So it will become an even big burden to the younger generations. And it also means that maybe in near future, the factories in this country cannot find enough workers to work in the factory, because there are just not enough number of people. And the reason behind this are multi phases. The one is because the house price is simply very high among all these countries. So many young people they think they cannot simply feed themselves. How could they possibly give and cultivate the children? It's simply impossible. So many people give up the hope to have a kids because they don't want their kids to suffer. So that's simply choose not to have a kids. Yeah, and the other is that many younger generation they think that because in the past the older generation many of them give birth to the kids because of some moral pressure. Yeah, if you don't give a kids, then your neighbor will condemn you. Your older generation, your family will also condemn you for not having a kids. But now among younger generations, we no longer have such a moral pressures to others. Yeah, so if you want to have a kids or not, it's your freedom. Yeah, no one will force you to have a kids nowadays. So many people they would rather choose to keep the money and then use the money to travel around the world or use the money to do some investment but they don't want to use the money to have kids. They spend money on the kids. Yes, they just want to make themselves more comfortable in their day-to-day life. Yeah, so now it's having a kids become a choice instead of obligation in the eye of many younger generation. Yeah, so it is not surprising to see the declining of the birth rate in many advanced economy. I think that the Taiwan or East Asia is not the exception. The birth rate is very low in many Western countries. Yeah, so I think they just share the similar reason. And I think most of the country they try to use different policies to boost the birth rate, but so far I did not see any success policy to increase the birth rate because in the eye of many people, they just think it's a choice. So it's very hard to force people to make a very strong commitment to spend another 20 years to have a kids and then to cultivate a kids. It was just a very so the investment was just too big. Yeah.
Yes, that's funny. But from an emotional point of view, we could say that they should just try and have one or two kids, as you have two kids also, because if you don't have a child, you don't know how it feels to be connected to something that you feel it's yours or it's part of you, right?
Yeah, I agree with you. I also have two kids. Yeah, so my son Rome, he is 10 years old, and my daughter Elena, she's 7. Yeah, so I really I really appreciate that I have them because that they bring me a lot of happiness and they make my life complete. So I really
Wow.
so I'm really happy to have two kids as a father. Yeah, but at the same time, maybe you can see that a lot of my hair turned gray because I cannot sleep well at night and I need to work even harder compared to many others in my generation because I need additional money to feed my kids and I need the money to send my kids to learn some new instrument or to learn pianos and I need to spend my time to pick up my kids to the current school or to the piano teachers as I so I a lot of extra cost to having a kid. So I fully
But then
understand that if my friend
yeah.
don't want to have a kid, I respect their choice. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But then the children are worth spending or sacrificing for, right?
Yes, I agree with you. Yeah.
Well, we're speaking from a human or moral perspective, but then that
Yeah.
issue of choice, as you said, is more of a political or kind of a choice, personal choice. And as somebody who is democratic like you, we cannot force people to have children, right?
Yeah.
That's good. So finally, US-China relationship over Taiwan. Why is the United States interested in a country, in an island that is miles away from it? Why? Why the concern?
Yeah, actually, the reason why the U.S. want to protect or help Taiwan, the reason keep changing since the World War II because that before the World War II, the U.S. Want to protect Taiwan or the U.S. want the Japan return Taiwan back to China simply because the U.S. and Japan they are enemy to each other
Mm,
because Japan attacked the U.S. during the World War II. So after the World War II the Japan surrender. So the U.S. government asked Japan to leave Taiwan, yeah, because the Japan had colonized Taiwan for 50 years till the World War II. Yeah, but after that, the China quickly fall into the civil war. So the ROC government retreated to Taiwan, and at the same time, the Korean War also happened. So in the eye of the United States, the U.S. was worried that the communism will keep expanding from Russia to China to North Korea and all the way to Taiwan and then to the whole Asia and even reach the United States. So in the eye of the US, during the Cold War, the Taiwan was called the first island chain, which link between Japan, South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, and Philippines. So these are the front line to help the US defend the expansion of the communism from the Russia. So that's why the U.S. tried to protect the Taiwan during the Cold War. But now the reason also changed slightly. So now the U.S. Or we can say many people in the U.S. they want to protect Taiwan for three reasons. The first is still about the first island chain because that the Taiwan and Japan can prevent China to further go to the Pacific Ocean. Yeah, so the whole Pacific Ocean is still under the protection, or we can say under the control of the United States. So it's a first reason. But now the second reason is because both Taiwan and the US are both democracy. And in the eye of the many peoples in the US, they believe that if we can bring democracy to the whole world, then maybe democratic countries don't attack each other. Yeah, so it is a very old belief of the former president uh, Wilson. So because of this, since Taiwan and the U.S. are both democracies, so many people in the U.S. are willing to help defend Taiwan. Yeah, because once Taiwan return to China, then the Taiwan will be controlled under another communist party. Yeah, so the Taiwan will no longer have democracy. So the recent case is in Hong Kong. Hong Kong used to have democratic election or competitive election, but it's no longer the case. After 2019, when many protesters were repressed and expelled or fled from Hong Kong. And also in recent year, one reason why the U.S. want to protect Taiwan is because the U.S. there's a very huge trade between the U.S. and Taiwan. There are very huge, intense cooperation. on technology between the US and Taiwan, because now there are many important companies, chip-making companies in Taiwan have the most advanced technology to building computers, to building the most advanced chip. For example, most of the chips we use in all iPhones or in all laptops were all designed and manufactured in Taiwan. So if the US can keep its cooperation with Taiwan, then it means that the US can access the most advanced technologies from Taiwan. So that's another reason that the US want to protect Taiwan, because for both security and economic concern.
Yeah. So a typical US critic would say it's about protecting the United States interests, not the interest of the Taiwanese people. Yes or no?
I think that for every actions that the US did, US also do this based on its own calculations or based on its own interests. Yeah, so I think there's no way we can deny it. But there are two things I want to add. The first is that the US interest itself is always under the debate. Yeah, so as a citizen of the US, I can also voice myself, try to change the definition of the U.S. interest. So the U.S. interest is always within huge debate among many think tanks in the Washington D.C. So it's very hard to define that. Yeah, it is U.S. interest. It is not the U.S. interest, because the U.S. interest itself, the definition keeps changing because it's always under debate in Washington D.C. And the second is that in the eye of many Taiwanese people, they know that the U.S. protect Taiwan is because of the U.S. interest. But at the same time, Taiwan still enjoys such a protection. So that's why we didn't see any major war in the Taiwan Strait in the past 70 years. For example, we all know that before the outbreak of the Korean War, when North Korea started to invade South Korea, before that, the China president Mao Zedong already prepared its military and was already to invade Taiwan in 1950. But after the outbreak of the Korean War, then the US started to send its troops to both the South Korea and also to Japan and Taiwan. So in the end, the China President Mao, he gave up the plan to invade Taiwan. So that's why the Taiwan can maintain its current status quo, or Taiwan strike can maintain peace for the past 7 years because of this U.S. possible military intervention and because of the U.S. protection, right? So if everyone can enjoy such a peaceful moment for 70 years, so it should also serve as an important interest in the eye of Taiwanese people. So even though many Taiwanese people know that it's a U.S. interest. Yeah, for example, 2 years ago, the U.S. forced Taiwan to start import the U.S. pork. Yeah, even though many Taiwanese people, they don't want to eat the U.S. pork. Yeah, so it is definitely that a U.S. interest. But still, in most of the situations, Taiwanese people, they think the U.S. interest and interest of Taiwan, they are on the same direction. Yeah, so they think it is okay, yeah, to go along with the U.S. because we are on the similar or on the same direction. Yeah.
Yeah, so the Taiwanese are okay with the US things and interests and policies and advice, possibly suggestions.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So final question. Is it, looking at the history, is it possible for China to invade Taiwan? Yes, or it's also
Well, I
complicated?
think it highly depends on how the current president of China, how Xi Jinping, he was thinking. Yeah, so because China always had a plan to invade Taiwan. So China had prepared it for more than 70 years because China always believed that the Taiwan and mainland China belong to the same countries or belong to the same nation. And especially for the PRC China, they have this kind of thinking because they want to end what they call the century of humiliation, because they believe that during the Qing dynasty, the Chinese people was repressed and then possibly colonized by many Western power, including Japan. So they think that Japan took Taiwan in 1955, and after that, the Japan colonized Taiwan for 50 years. But before that, they think that Taiwan belonged to China. So they think based on the same reason, now the China had goes up, the China had become one superpower around the world, then the last step to prove China was strong, is already strong enough, is the return of Taiwan. Yeah, so in the eye of the Chinese people, they have very strong nationalism. They believe that the unification of Taiwan is the final proof that China had been a great power. If China cannot reunify Taiwan, then it means that China was not strong yet. China haven't finally resolved all of the legacy of the colonization in the past. Yeah, so that's why many people in China, they always believe that the unification of Taiwan is their red line. Yeah, so but at the same time, whether China will really take action to invade Taiwan, I think it largely depends on two issues. The first is about economy, because currently the economic development in China still have very strong connection to the economy in Taiwan, because since 2000, it was the Taiwanese businessmen that bring a lot of capitals and a lot of technology to China to help China have its first economic boost, especially in 1990s. And nowadays, there is still very strong economic cooperation between China and Taiwan. So if the war really happened, then all of this economy activity will stop, which will influence China's economy a lot. It will definitely influence economy in Taiwan as well, right? But at the same time, if the economy in China keep going down, then in the eye of the Chinese government, then it will be a big problem, because the China government established its legitimacy based on good economic performance in the past. If China's economy goes down, then people in China will question that whether we should replace the Communist Party with others, right? So the China government must try to do something to keep its legitimacy. So one possible way to keep its legitimacy is to manipulate the nationalism, or just like have more conflict with other country, or to invade Taiwan, or to have more conflict in the South China Sea or Senkaku Islands. All of these are possible options. So, so the one possible problem that both the Taiwan and US are calculating is that China President Xi Jinping, he might seek another re-election in 2027, because each term in China will be 5 years. So now Xi is on his third term, and Xi might going to seek his fourth term, and his fourth term will begin in 2027. So and so far Xi didn't make any unique accomplishment in his third term. So many people believe that Xi could possibly do something before the 2027, but we just don't know what kind of something Xi is going to do. Yeah, because it's very arbitrary. Yeah, so we just don't know. Yeah, so many people would imagine that maybe China would possibly create another Crimea moment in the Taiwan strike. For example, China might occupy some small island that is nearby China, or some small island in the South China Sea. All of these are some possible scenario that many think tanks in the US are thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. It's very complicated, and it continues to remain a very complicated issue. Let's just hope for the peace. That is what we call in journalism, solution journalism, definitely. And let's hope that the world is going to be a peaceful place. Even though looking at the realism theory, it's impossible for every country to be peaceful. But let's just hope for the minimization of the conflicts taking place. Dr. Austin Wang, there's a lot to discuss, but we've been talking for more than an hour. Finally, what can you say about Global Arena, this program?
Well, I think this program is quite good, because I think that you prepare a lot, and try to translate some very complex knowledge into some plain words to let your audience to know what is going on around the world. So I really appreciate your efforts, and thank you for having me. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, Edith. There's one joke that we normally do here in Africa, especially in Nigeria. We normally think that the Chinese, the Koreans, and the Japanese are all the same people. Is it true that you guys look the same, and even your language is the languages are the same?
Well, I think the language in China and Japan and Korea are totally different. And as someone who had ever lived in East Asia, I can tell you that we can easily distinguish who are Japanese, who are Korean, and who are Chinese. Yeah, we think we are all different. But I understand that when I live in the US, the people in the US always treat us as that you are all Asian. You're all look similar. Yeah, so, yeah.
Or maybe they just say that you're just Chinese. Because here,
Yeah,
that's what we say. When we see a Korean person, we say, oh, he's Chinese. But when somebody says, no, he's Korean, well, they are the same people, just Chinese, because maybe China is more popular than Japan and Korea here in Africa, right?
Yeah, I think there are more Chinese immigrants or more Chinese worker or business in Africa compared to Japan and South Korea. And I understand that sometimes it's hard for different ethnic group to distinguish each other because we only have limited experience. But I just want to say that if we can learn more about all other cultures and all other countries, then we can better distinguish between ethnic group or different culture. Then if we more about each other, yeah. So maybe we can then it is more likely that we can respect each others and enjoy that the culture that we exchange with each other. Yeah.
Yes, and live peacefully, side by side with each other.
Yes.
Many thanks, Dr. Austin Wang, for being on Global Arena. I can't thank you enough, and I hope this is not going to be your last appearance on the show. We hope when next you have an opportunity, we'll be able to sit down together and discuss other important global issues. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, sure.
It's
my pleasure.
Appearing on the show. And thank you for recording.
Okay, so
okay, viewers, on behalf of everyone that has contributed to the production of the program, my name is Umar Isa Dandago, and I'm saying see you very soon, and many thanks to Dr. Austin Wang. Shisha.
Yes,
yeah. Is it Shisha or Sheshe?
谢谢.
Yeah, Sheshe. Okay, so let me say Sheshe, Dr. Wang.
谢谢. Yeah, thank you.
All right.